Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you, I guess, the second part in me sharing my favorite books from different time periods. I did a first version of this where I shared my favorite books published before 2010. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my favorite books published between 2010 and 2019. I decided that for this video, instead of sharing them in order of publication, I'm gonna share them in order of when I read them. I did start tracking on Goodreads in 2012, so I have pretty good recollection of these books through Goodreads. There's one or two that I think the date that I read them is a little off, because on Goodreads you didn't used to be able to track rereads like you can now, so the date that's listed is more current than I think the first time I read them, but I'll mention that when I get to those couple books. So the first book I have to share I read in 2012. In 2012 I was a freshman in high school and I was 15 years old, and so the book that I have to share from then is Birthmarked by Kara M. O'Brien. And I don't remember much about this book, but I remember like when I read it, and this definitely like sparked my interest for reading again. Like I said, I don't remember much about this, but I do know it's like a dystopian, and I think that the main character like helps deliver babies. For some reason, like that is sticking in my mind. I have meant to reread this series for a very long time and still haven't, so I'm hoping to get to a reread of this series soon. I remember reading this like in my school's library, like during a class period. I'm not sure why I was in the library, but that's the memories that it's bringing up. And this was published in 2010. Then in 2013, I read Eleanor in Park by Rainbow Rowell, and I literally used to be obsessed with this book. I considered this my favorite book for a long time. I have reread this multiple times, and actually I think Chris has listened to the audiobook of this. I think he did that at some point, like when we first started dating. I haven't revisited this for a while. It did catch some heat for the Asian representation in this with Park's family, so I would like to reread this and kind of see that again with fresh eyes, but this was definitely a favorite of mine, and this was actually published in 2013 when I read it. Then in 2014, I have two books that I read, and in 2014 I was 17 and Chris and I actually started dating in 2014. And my favorites from that year, I have Every Day by David Levithan, and this story follows a person who wakes up in a different body every day and like lives that person's life for a day, and they wake up as female, male, black, white, like they can wake up as anybody, but it's generally they wake up in the body of somebody around the same age, which is like a teenager age. I have reread this one many of times. It's tabbed in like how when I first started tabbing books, and it has like the huge tabs that stick out so far, so I'd like to reread this and fix my tabs. I went through and fixed my tabs when I was rereading the Legend series this past year, but I really love this one, and this is another one I'm pretty sure I got my sister to read this. I don't think she loved it like I did, but I love getting other people to read my favorites. And then this next one is one that I think the date on Goodreads is a reread. I think I read this earlier than 2014. The first evidence I can find of it is in 2014, and that is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. This was very popular back then, and I'm not sure if this is one that I would love again. Eventually, I probably will reread it. I don't know why I have to keep saying that. I'm a big rereader. Most of these, considering I consider them my favorites, will probably eventually be reread. But I do have a signed first edition of this, so there's that. And both of these were published in 2012. Then I have three books from 2015, and 2015 is the year I graduated high school, and the first one I have from then is Undivided by Neal Shusterman. Unwind, which is the first book in this series, was included in my before 2010 version of this video, but this final book was published in late 2014, and I read it right away in 2015. And this series is just like my favorite series of all time, so I'm happy to include books from it twice. This is a political, sci-fi, dystopian, YA series. I love it to death. This is the other book that I know the date listed was a reread, and it's Divergent by Veronica Roth. This book says that I read it in 2015, but I know that I read Allegiant the week it came out. I have that listed that I read Allegiant October 27th of 2013, and I know that was like the release week, and so I I had obviously read these before that, so I'm guessing I read this actually in like 2012 or 2013, but I'm a dystopian girly and I love Divergent as well. And then this was kind of the start of me getting into more like actual fantasy, but I read Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas in 2015. I keep forgetting to mention the publication years and not just the year I read them. So Undivided was published in 2014, Divergent was 2011, and Throne of Glass was 2012. Also going to look at when this was published. I do have everything published before A Court of Thorns and Roses signed because I went to a signing, so that's fun. This one just says, to Bailey, thanks for coming. Yay. But moving forward, I feel like this is like a second era of the decade. These next ones feel more recent than those because everything before this was like high school and everything now forward is like since high school, and there was actually a little gap in my reading, so those last ones were read in 2015 and the next ones I'm going to share were published in 2018. And in 2018 Chris and I got married. I was 21 years old, and the only favorite I have on my list from 2018 is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, and this was published in 2015. And I will also say this was definitely like my start of getting into thrillers. I had read some before this, but this was like the darkest thing I had read at the time, so this also feels like the start of an era with that kind of reading taste. In 2019, I read Beartown by Fredrik Backman, which is a very like hard-hitting book that I loved so much. I did read this and the second book, and this was published in 2017. And also from 2019, the only book I actually don't own that I had put on this list is The 5 Love Languages. And while I don't think that the book itself is like the best thing ever, the concept of the 5 love languages I'm kind of obsessed with. So I did read that in 2019. If you want to know, my love language is acts of service. Now moving in to 2020, these are going to be the first books that I mention that I have read since I started my YouTube channel, because I started my channel in 2020. Firstly, I have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is kind of like probably one of my favorite historical books, and this was published in 2017. Then I have Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This was published in 2018, and this is a graphic novel about two boys in high school who are queer and also discovering that they're queer and their relationship together, and it's like the cutest thing ever. And lastly, in 2020, I have The One by John Mars, which is probably the book that I've influenced the most people to read. Chris read this last year, my stepmom read this, my mom read this, and all the people who are my friends on BookTube that I have influenced to read this as well. This is such a fast-paced thriller that I feel like it is very easy to recommend to like non-readers as well, because it's such a page turner that it keeps somebody like gripped throughout. But this was published in 2017. And then I have 2 books from the year 2021 that I read that have withstood the test of time and have made it to this all-time favorites kind of list. Firstly, published in 2012, I have Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. This is probably in my like top 3 favorite historical romances of all time. And also this was the year that I kind of like discovered historical romance. So I think that this is a good thing to include as like a timestamp of like, this is when my historical romance era was happening. And then lastly, published in 2019, I have No Exit by Taylor Adams, which the movie of this just came out and I did watch it. I did think the movie was okay, but I would definitely recommend the book over the movie. And this is again just a fun, really fast-paced, like really gripping, actually kind of scary thriller. So that's it. That's my list. Those were the 15 top books that I read that were published between the years of 2010 and 2019, and kind of my journey and growth through reading them. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.